Alright, today we're going to be doing Packet Tracer 5.3.1.2 Skills Integration Challenge. In this Skills Integration Challenge, your focus is OSPF v2 Advanced Configurations. IP addressing has been configured for all devices. You will configure OSPF v2 routing with passive interfaces and default route propagation. You will modify the OSPF v2 configuration by adjusting timers and establishing MD5 authentication. Finally, you will verify your configurations and test connectivity between end devices. Alright, so use the following requirements to configure OSPF v2 on router A and router B. So let's start with router A. Go in here to the command line and go ahead and start up here. Router OSPF 1, because we need to use a process ID of 1. We're going to advertise our network interface, which is gig00. Network address for the interface gig00 is 192.168.1.0. So network 192.168.1.0. And then what does it want? Oh, it wants a wildcard mask, so we're going to do 0.0.0.255. And then what? Oh, an area 0. Alright, and then we need to enable authentication for area 0, so we'll say area 0 authentication. Message digest, because that's what we're using is MD5. As stated up here, message digest 5. Alright, so it's good. We'll exit. We'll do a copy run start. And then what's next? OSPF priority set to 150 on the LAN interface of router A. So interface gig00 IP OSPF priority 150. What's next? OSPF MD5 authentication key ID of 1 and MD5 key Cisco on the LAN interface. Okay, so we're going to do IP OSPF, and then you have a couple choices here. You can use authentication key, but that's not the one we're going to be using here. We're going to be using message digest key because that's specifically for MD5. So message digest key ID of 1. I don't understand, sometimes there's only one option. I don't know why it doesn't just autofill, but anyway, MD5, and then the password is Cisco. We're going to set the hello interval to 5 and the dead interval to 20. So IP OSPF hello interval 5, IP OSPF dead interval 20, and let's do a write. Okay. Now let's go to router B. And do the same thing. Router OSPF process ID 1. We're advertising the same network in the same area. We need to enable authentication for area 0. And then we need to go back to gigabit 00. We need to set the priority to 100. We need to set the key . We need to set the hello and the dead intervals. So there we have it. That's all of router B. Alright, now let's move on to router C. Okay, router C. Use the following requirements to configure router C OSPF v2 routing. Again, process ID of 1, network address for the LAN interface, enable authentication for area 0. So let's start with that. Router OSPF 1, network 192.168.1.0, enable authentication, so area 0 authentication message digest. Next, we need to set all interfaces to passive by default, but allow OSPF updates on the active LAN. So what we're going to do is we're going to say passive interface, and then you can pick an interface. You can say Fast Ethernet 01 or Gig 00 or Serial 001. But we're going to say default, suppress routing updates on all interfaces. So we're going to say default, and there's nothing else to choose. So passive interface default, that has set the default to any interface is passive. Means it does not send OSPF updates. But we need the LAN interface to send them and receive them, so we're going to say Gig 00 sends. So no passive interface gigabit 00. And that jumped us up to 72, so that was what we need to do there. Set the router to distribute default routes. Okay, so default information originate. That's just a fancy way of saying I know the default route, and I'm going to tell it to all the other OSPF devices. So there's that. Now we need to configure a directly attached default route to the internet to actually make use of that last statement. So we're going to go out here and make a static route, IP route. What does it want? It wants the destination prefix. Well, it's for every network that we don't know, meaning anything that's not listed in our OSPF tables. So 0000, 0000, and where are we going to send it? We're going to send it out serial 000, and it doesn't tell us to set a metric, so we're not going to. Default route without gateway, if not a point-to-point interface, may impact performance. Pretty standard message, don't worry about that. Now we need to set the OSPF priority to 50 on the LAN interface. So here we go in interface Gig 00. IP OSPF priority 50. Set the OSPF MD5 authentication key ID1 and MD5 key Cisco. So we're going to say IP OSPF, and then we could use authentication key or message digest key, of course. And we're going to use message digest key, key ID1, MD5, and the key is Cisco. We're going to set the hello interval to 5 and the dead interval to 20, and we've got 100%. Let's see, verify your configurations and test connectivity. OSPF neighbors should be established and routing tables should be complete. Okay, let's check. Show IP route. Looks like we know our network and we know our interface, but we don't see the default route. Let's see. Router A should be DR, router B should be BDR. All three routers should be able to ping the web server. So, we skipped this. Issue the clear IP OSPF process command on router C if the default route does not propagate. So that's what we need to do. We go over here. Clear IP OSPF process. Yes. Boom, boom. Now let's see if router A knows. Not yet. Just give it a second. Okay, and there it is. We have our default route of 0000000. Okay, so OSPF neighbor should be established and routing table should be complete. Let's do show IP OSPF neighbors. So looks like 1.2 is the BDR. Sorry, let's pull this out a little bit. There we go. 1.2 is the BDR. 209.165.200.225, which is router 3 with priority of 50, is the other, which means router A is the DR. So that lines up. And let's see if everybody can ping the web server. Ping 64.100.1.2. Yay, router A can ping. Oops. Oh, do ping 64.100.1.2. Okay, router B can ping. And of course, if router A and router B can ping, router C probably can too, but let's just make sure. And looks like router C can ping. Alright guys, thanks for watching, and I hope I've helped you with your packet tracer.